Throughout the years, Michael Afton's story has been shrouded in mystery and confusion. We've seen him suffer, change, and even seemingly meet his end. But what if I told you that Mike is still around, and that he's the answer to the biggest questions we're facing in the franchise story right now? Grab a snack and get cozy, because I think I can prove to you that Michael Afton is still alive. Let's start with the small evidence before you ramp up to the obvious stuff. There are a lot of little details and notes in Security Breach. One of them is his grocery list of butters. That, on its own, isn't much to go off of. More than anything, this reads like a nod to an inside joke within the fandom. But it's not the only reference to Mike we see in the games. There are two notes that say, "Meeting with Smith at 5 p.m. We don't know a Smith besides Mike's alias, Fritz Smith. Keep in mind that small details like these are how we found out huge reveals like how Security Breach takes place in the 2030s and that Charlotte is still around. If it doesn't matter, why include it? Take a look at this. This is an email from FNAF AR addressed to M. Afton. Who would that be besides Michael? Finally, the sister location room. The real damning evidence. When this was first discovered, mass confusion hit the fandom. People have a lot of theories on who wrote the wall code, but no one really likes to talk about the why and how of this room because of how many problems it causes. So most people just write it off saying it's a replica or something. But this isn't a replica. It can't be. Why would Fazbear make a replica of Mike's room in the first place? Why would this room have a way to play the therapy CDs? Why would Freddy and friends be playing? Why would the entrance be hidden? Why would the wall code be here? It just doesn't make sense. This has to be Michael's room. Ultimately though, none of that evidence matters if we know for a fact that Mike died in FNAF 6. But we don't know that for a fact. All of the ending scenes feature this character who is implied to be Mike, including the endings where Henry's plan is successful and Michael supposedly dies. And he receives a certificate after each ending, in-game. He had to have survived. As to how, it could be a few things. It's possible that a remnant might not actually be destroyed by heat, or that a spirit can force itself to stay if it has unfinished business, and that while heat gives it a way to pass on if it wants to, it can't prevent the spirit from staying. Or that Michael did actively use the escape that Henry mentioned during his transmission. Whichever way Michael lived to fight another day, it's clear that he did live. It's even possible that his remnant is not only keeping him around, but also regrowing his flesh. Recall that we only see Mike decompose when Ennard is in him, that Burntrap has flesh growing on him, and that the books demonstrate multiple instances of remnant having healing properties. Back to Mike's room, the wall code itself inarguably details Gregory's actions, whether you think he's a robot or not. I personally do, but either way it's clear that these are instructions that Gregory is following. And if this is Michael's room, he would have had to have written this. But why? If Gregory isn't a robot and he's just a kid that's helping Michael for some reason, why write a wall code for him? Just tell him what you want him to do. If Gregory is a robot, just program these instructions directly into him. Why would Michael write this? When you look at this room, the first thing people look to is the wall code, and after that, the therapy CD player. But in order to find out why Michael wrote this for Gregory, we need to dissect this room a bit more. Freddy and Friends is playing, a Roxy Raceway poster is on the wall, and a popcorn bucket has fallen over. I'll talk about that poster in a bit, but to take a second look at the TV. These tapes are corrupted with a glitch trap virus. Why did Michael write these instructions for Gregory to destroy the glam rocks in his weird coded language? I believe it's because he was getting corrupted by glitch trap. Why would Steel Wool include his corrupted Freddy and Friends playing on the TV? Why include Mike's popcorn spilled on the ground? They are showing us that something happened to Mike. Look at this, it looks like a crime scene straight out of Law & Order. I believe that, while trying to fight off this replication of his father, Mike wrote a base directive for Gregory to follow in case Mike suddenly became unable to do it himself. But Gregory isn't the only kid Mike is connected to. The identity of Cassie's father has been a question in everyone's mind since Ruin came out. I think a lot of people just want to say, "It's Bonnie Bro," or some other nameless nobody because they don't want to deal with the possibility of Cassie's father being a character we already know. But I've gone over why it just doesn't make sense for Cassie's dad to be some random new character in this video, link in the description. There is evidence that can't be ignored that points to the likelihood that Cassie's father is either William, Henry, or Michael. I talk about that subject in depth and why I think, in a way, all of these men have been Cassie's caretaker/guardian at some point in the timeline in this video, again, link in the description. But my point is, in the present day, Michael is the only one of these candidates that could be Cassie's father now. But rather than list everything we know about Cassie's father, let's go over what specifically connects Cassie to Michael. In the AR world, which we know is influenced by the mind of the person inside it, we see this note. Gone for a while, mining for food on the counter. emergency contacts on the fridge. This is almost certainly a note that Cassie's dad left her at some point, but what does this tell us? Well, the nonchalant nature of the writing implies that her father leaving her is a normal occurrence. Since there's money for food on the counter and emergency contacts on the fridge, it also implies that whenever her father is out of the house, Cassie is alone. She doesn't have a mother or a babysitter or any siblings. This fits. No one shows up to Cassie's birthday party, including her father, because he's usually not around. We even know that she's used to sleeping in the daycare. Mike's busy with all his plans against his father and his job as a Fazbear technician. We know Mike has his history of tampering with the animatronics anyway. Honestly, this reminds me of Mike and Abby's relationship from the movie. Let's take another look at Mike's room. I don't think it's a coincidence that Cassie's favorite character poster is on his wall. And don't forget that Cassie mentions how her dad is a fan of Freddy and Friends, which we see playing on Mike's TV. If Mike is Cassie's dad, then that also explains why she got access to a ride in the Pizzaplex that wasn't even finished, since he works there. Cassie even dislikes Baby and talks about her with spite. If Michael is her father and she's aware of his history with circus babies, then that also makes sense. And finally, Cassie's father seems to not be around anymore, at all. This could mean he's dead, but if her dad is Mike and I'm right about that wherever he is now, he's corrupted by Glitchtrap, then that lines up too. All of this is to say that if Mike is alive, then that explains all the references to him, the existence of his room, who wrote the code for Gregory, why the code was written, and who Cassie's dad is. If you disagree with this theory, then please by all means comment what you think the answers to these questions are. I read every comment and I love to see your theories. Consider subscribing if you had fun watching me babble about these games. I make theories just like this one every week. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye!